Welcome to VolleyTalk. Alongside me here, Snodson. I'm Elliot Skelly. Join us today, the head coach of the Independence Blue Devils, Lexi Prokopius. Coach, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Doing good. So hey, talk to me about your journey starting the boys program at Independence last year.
Well, last year, so we had a kid, he kind of started he started bugging our AD and was like, "Hey, we really want to do a boys team." And then the AD called me and was like, "Hey, we're doing a boys team. Get ready. You got to get get these guys ready." It was like a month-long process. Like I found out in January that I was coaching a boys team, and then February was our first practice. So it was a quick turnaround, but it was very exciting.
Yeah, so was that OHSAA regulation of the sport, did that have a lot to do with getting to start a program?
I think that it helped, but I also think that the kid that really wanted a program was a senior, and
Okay.
from freshman to senior year was just like pestering and trying to try to get a team for him to have for his senior year.
Yeah, definitely. So then
Yeah.
when you were recruiting boys, how did that process look like?
So it first started off with me kind of just telling the AD we need to get like kids involved. Like we need to start getting them in the gym now because no one played volleyball before. So it's kind of a word of mouth from the senior. And then it was also the AD. We did a bunch of volleyball meetings. Hey, open gym. Like I would just go after school, say, hey, there's open gyms. Everyone's welcome. Just try it out. I know it's a new sport for all of you, but it is a fun sport to learn. And once you learn it, you guys will have a lot of fun. So open gyms was really kind of word of mouth, social media.
Well, you basically turned just a program that started only last year and you take them all the way towards the state semifinals. Can you talk about the grit that you saw from your team as they pulled off upsets over Villa Angela, St. Joseph, and Chardon en route to a trip to Wittenberg last year?
Yeah. So honestly, at the beginning of the season, it was kind of like, oh, we're going to states for the first year. And then as the season kept going, we all saw the progress that these kids were making. Like they would come into practice and they would learn, they would focus, and then they cared. So it kind of just came into going into the game every day, like, okay, well, this could be our last game, and just kind of playing our hearts out, having good energy, having good like communication, chemistry, kind of is like, and taking the sport and making it fun and not as serious as the sports that they've played kind of is what like my it still is what I go by, but like that's kind of what I went by last year, and I think that's why like we were so successful kind of thing.
Yeah. So you got to that state tournament. Obviously, you faced San Francisco de Sales, who's a perennially good program. So that was a tough first opponent. But what was the experience like to get to play Wittenberg?
Um I think that the kids when they walked in the gym, their eyes lit up. Like they were all very excited. They wanted to stay in like I wanted them to kind of like focus in, hone in on like just be with the team, but they wanted to watch all the other games go on because realistically, the teams that were in the state tournament are probably like were the best teams in Ohio. So they haven't seen that yet. So they were excited to finally see what volleyball is supposed to look like. And then I just think it made it more like that. It made my team more hungrier to try to get back this year.
Hey, I'll say, I mean, watching, I don't know about you here, but I was kind of like, yeah, first year D2 program against DeSales, we'll see. But that means 25-18 that first set. That was pretty impressive to see. So,
Yeah, that was a very impressive. I was very like my expectations were through like not that high. And then when they scored 18 points, I was like, all right, well, we can do it.
Yeah, and I remember after the game, Elliot and I were talking, and we were basically saying, hey, for a group that only started playing together at the beginning of that year, and to go all the way to the state semifinals and to play against the sales who ended up winning it all, that's a pretty good performance, and that's a great showing in general.
Yeah.
So, taking a look now at your own playing career in general, you played at Damon University in New York, and you're the head coach of the girls volleyball program at Cuyahoga Heights before you came back to Independence, your alma mater. First off, how did your time playing volleyball in college help further your passion and coaching ability for the game?
I just think that so COVID kind of ruined. So I played for a year and a half at Damon, and then once COVID happened, I decided to come home and I would watch my little sister play, and I was just like realizing the things that I learned in college that like the kids in high school could like the girls in high school could know. And then I was like, maybe I'm not done with volleyball. I knew I was done playing, but when I started watching it and realizing I knew it, I still like knew it. I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll just transform this into coaching. And yeah, I don't know. I guess just playing for so many years and then just like automatic, like having it stop and then me realizing that I know the sport like outside of being a player is kind of what made me like what helps me, I don't know volleyball, I guess.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think adding on to that is that you were at Independence, you played 4 years in the volleyball program there. How does it feel to, one, be back at your alma mater, and two, give back to it?
I tell everyone that coaching at Independence is probably my favorite, is the best years that I've had at Independence. Like I loved playing volleyball there, but being a coach and being part of the volleyball legacy still is just so rewarding. And like me being a coach for the kids that went to Independence who want to play volleyball, like keep going and playing volleyball is just so rewarding. And doing it in my alma mater gym is, I mean, I don't know. Like it can't get better than that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hey, you look at you come into this off season with a full year of the program existing. How much different was it to actually have a base to go off of?
So we actually graduated our setter who played volleyball. So this off season, we really focused on setting and hitting because that setter hitter communicate like chemistry is everything when it comes to a game. So where last year we were learning the fundamentals, so we learned passing, and then once we got passing down, then we focused to setting, and like we were doing it one step at a time. Where this year we have the passing, we just worked on like pass to set to kill with every hitter to try to get comfortable, let the setters get comfortable, like learning a new position. So we were more offensively focused during the off season.
Now, boys volleyball is fairly new to the region. Is there a talk about forming a league with some of the other teams, perhaps some in Region 7, or a push for some middle school programs?
Well, I know that this year we are actually part of a conference with teams that started last year. So Berkshire, Perry, Chardon, VASJ, oh, NDCL, we're all in a conference this year. We're hoping as more teams as like it's coming more up here than it was in Columbus. We're hoping that like it's just gonna keep growing and growing, but we'll see. It's awesome that we're in a conference this year though.
That's really cool here. I mean, conference championships are a really cool thing to play for.
Yeah.
So we're catching you right after a match against Mayfield. How'd it go tonight?
We won. Woo.
Nice. There you go.
Yeah. It was exciting. It was a good their first year program, and it reminded me of a lot where we were last year. They are going to be a very good program coming like as they keep going. It'll be exciting to see where they end up.
Awesome to see that growth in Ohio. So you've also got like Hudson and Brexville Broadview, who had some very good D1 programs in the area on your schedule. What does it mean to have that level of competition in your schedule?
I think that it will help the boys understand more of what it's going to look like if we were to make it down to state again. We last year we didn't really play those teams like Francis DeSales and that like a run a faster offense that passes a perfect ball every time. So the fact that we get to see those people in the begin like in the season, I think it'll prepare us and let us know what we have to work on in the weeks of the playoffs and stuff.
Definitely. Well, tomorrow night on your schedule, it looks like you got Nordonia again. You took a loss to them earlier in the season. What is it? What are your keys for getting another crack at them tomorrow?
We got to work on our blocking. We got to shut down their two hitters. Um, Passing our serve receive like our first game. That was our first game of the season. Our serve receive and our blocking is what killed us. And since then, we have only really been focusing on that. So we're hoping for a little better of a turnout with those, with like focusing on those two things.
There you go. Well, hey, we appreciate you coming on. Great tournament run last year. Hopefully you can get it going. Great to see some more programs popping up in Ohio. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, that was Lexi Prokopius. Thanks to her again for coming on. Great to get some recognition on some of the up and coming programs in Ohio. I'm just getting into some of the news that happened while we were away. I think the big one first up was St. X took down Moeller in 4. Like we were talking about, right? Height on Moeller's side, the lack of it, that is, seemed to play a big role in that win. What were your thoughts on that St. X victory?
Yeah, I think Casey Piper hit it right on the nail. You can't teach height, and I felt like Saint X had that throughout the game. I think the biggest takeaway for me is just Joe Taggart. He's just a force of nature. The guy's a sophomore, and I remember watching that game and I was comparing what I was seeing in the moment to what I saw from Bentley Meyer his sophomore year. And I kind of had to stop myself and say, hold on, compare 2021 Saint X, where Bentley Meyer was a sophomore starting in a 6-man group that included 5 seniors, and compare that to Joe Taggart with the personnel he has now. There's some juniors or some seniors, a little bit more versatility when it comes to classes. And the fact that he can step into a role like he did on Friday night and just boss the left-hand side of the net, it was just incredible to watch. I feel like Saint X has found its true replacement with Bentley Meyer leaving. And I even told you after the game, I even posted on social media, don't be surprised if this guy wins Region 4 Player of the Year, or at least you can throw his name into the conversation after Friday night.
It's tough to keep him out. The other key I thought was Brady Jones. I mean, running that 31, it looks unstoppable against pretty much every team they're running against. We also had the Liberty quad. We had St. X going 3-0, beat in best of 3 matches. They beat Berlin, Brecksville, and Liberty all in 3. So they went the distance with all of them. Now, Liberty was without Austin Mallory, who's their libero we talked about. So they had to pull Ryan Severson back, and it looked like almost that team last year that had Ryan injured. So honestly, I don't even think Ryan was that bad of a libero. It was more so just missing the threat at outside hitter. So take from that what you will. I will say I think Caden Whiteside's got to be the early player of the year favorite. I mean, you watched him play, he's like really tough to stop. Berlin's coach Jim Cornette, one of the things he told me, and he told me I could quote him on this. He said St. X might have beaten Liberty, but with Austin, Liberty's the better team. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, that's not going to put Liberty above X in my rankings. I think it's part of the game having people out. You have guys choose to go play lacrosse. I mean, you have to play through that. But I will say, say St. X loses to St. Ignatius, I'm okay putting Liberty up back in that 1 spot before we get into the Elite 8. But obviously, it is all talk until we get to the Elite 8.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you there. I felt like St. X still came out strong, but like you said, it felt like Liberty was just missing that one piece in Mallory that kind of makes this a complete team. And I know there's been a lot of pressure on Mallory to live up to what Jack Sullenberger did last year in that team that went to the state finals. So I think that result was understandable. But like you said, I think it's the same here. I'm still putting St. X at #1 over Liberty.
From what I've seen right now, it is St. X and Liberty way up here, everyone else down there. I mean, I would be shocked. I mean, floored if it is not either St. X or Liberty who ends up winning the state championship. I mean, they just seem so far ahead of every other team. The one other thing I will say on St. X, I think they played 5 matches so far. They have not swept anyone yet. They've never beaten anyone in straight sets. Now, of course, they played good competition. Even like St. Charles is probably their worst competition, still a great contender in D2. I don't know. I wonder if that bothers Bill Ferris-Stahl. I've seen like they looked a little streaky, I think, for missing serves. I think that's probably their biggest weakness right now. Very offensively efficient, obviously great defensive team, but I think they got dialed in on the service line.
Yeah, I think that's one thing. And again, volleyball is a game of momentum. And I think going back to that game against Moeller, there were some times where the Crusaders, they just get a few calls this way. Maybe St. X doesn't like it, but all of a sudden the Crusaders are up and they take a set. So I think for the Bombers, it's just playing a complete game. And if they can get a sweep, especially down the way, that would be helpful.
We had Baden play Roger Bacon. Roger Bacon went up 2-0. Baden came up for the reverse sweep. They fell just short. They also had a pretty bad loss to McNick. That kind of hurt them in my rankings, I think, my perception of them at least. McNick won one of the sets 25-9. So definitely cements them as one of the top teams in the state. Certainly Baden, no slouch of a team. So we'll see how that plays out in D2.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is we're still trying to get used to this new Baden ever since Anitra Brockman left. And again, under Anitra Brockman, this team were state contenders. They won the state title in, I believe, 2022. And
Yep.
that team was just all out well from front to back. And that team could have been well as a D1 team. They could have won the state title as a Division I team. That's how good they were. And now you're kind of taking a step back. Brockman's gone to Central State, and now you're trying to find who would be a good head coach despite still being some good pieces overall. So I was kind of piqued to see Roger Bacon get the win against Baden, because last year the only team that beat Baden in Hamilton was McNick. So it was just a little combination, a little bit of connection between the two.
Now, this is something that was kind of interesting to me. We had Brexville Broadview Heights. Now, it's kind of the battle of Brexville Broadview and Ignatius for the title of the best team in the North right now. Obviously, they had a good showing, took X to 3, lost to Liberty in 2, and then beat Berlin. Now, they also went 5 with Jackson recently. Now, I don't know. I can't nail down this Brexville team. I told you before I had them low because I didn't like the way they played against St. Ed's. It didn't look crisp to me. I thought they had a good showing at the quad, and I like going 5 with Jackson really isn't something that the best team in the North should be doing.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you on that. And I think maybe it's just how the North's going to play out this year, right? We saw Hudson be a standalone in that region too, and it was just kind of a big muddle from 2 towards 5. For example, Jackson, at some point, I think when we went through like predicting the seedings, at least towards the top, you and I both had Jackson in a 2 or 3 seed. They ended up at 5 and ended up losing their opening playoff matchup to Stowe. So that Region 2 was stacked last year, and I won't be surprised if it's this year, but now the #1 spot is also in contention.
We'll touch on it later. I think we actually came to opposite conclusions, but St. Ignatius right now, 7-0, has not dropped a set yet. Also have not played any top 10 opponents at the Division I level. So we'll see how that plays out. Their next big test will come, I believe, April 6th. They'll have a try with St. X and Mount Vernon. So we'll see how that's probably their first big test to see if they're a legit team this year. We were also talking about Bishop Fenwick. They played Elder, lost in 4, but very, very close loss. I think their lowest set score was 22. So like lowest set loss is 25-22 to Elder. So I don't know, great showing. Elder's obviously perennially good program and in our top 10 this year. So yeah, I mean, good showing for Fenwick.
Yeah, I agree with you. And now this is the second time we've seen a D2 team go into a GCL South venue and take a set from the hosts, as we saw St. Charles do it against St. X earlier this year. And I think the biggest thing for me with Fenwick is they were just consistent. They kept on fighting. They didn't let Elders Gym really get to it, because if you've never stepped inside Elders Wrestling and Volleyball Gymnasium, it's a very interesting venue to play at and even call at times, because it's about 800 seats. The ceiling's high because obviously the volleyballs go high, but at the same time, there's just an electric atmosphere inside that place. Maybe it's because the fans are so close to the action, but in terms of calling matches, when I did so for St. X and traveling to all these different schools, I think that was probably the most electric atmosphere I've seen St. X play in when I was there. So translate that over to Fenwick, and now they've got to go to this Rosh's environment, and you get a set off of them. That's still pretty good overall. They kept on fighting, and the fourth set, I believe they were up 9-4 at one point before the Panthers settled back into that game and eventually took the final set 25-22. But again, it was a close game. Fenwick's got a lot to be proud of.
It is definitely on my bucket list to visit the pit someday. I've obviously seen a lot of their streams, seen some you've called, but never visited there in person. So hopefully we can remedy that next couple years. Other thing I want to touch on, Chris Jones is actually injured for Derby. We're talking about him. He's their big outside this year. They haven't lost since he's been out though. So I believe they have wins over Thomas Worthington and Kilbourne. So they're finding ways to get it done. So I don't know. I don't see any reason to take them out of the top 10 yet, but we'll get into rankings here. Top 3, pretty makes sense there. We got St. X and Liberty. And then Moeller. Those results from this past week, kind of self-explanatory. The big debate we're talking about with St. Ignatius and Brexville Broadview. Again, the only thing I would say there, I don't know. I think that St. Ignatius just needs to play some quality competition. That's all. The only thing I'm looking for. They've been dominant. They've been crisp, and that's great to see. I just need to see a good win to prove to me that they belong in that spot of Brexville Broadview. Brexville Broadview has a good win over Berlin, and they played St. X competitively. So that's all I need to put them at the 4 spot.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I feel like you touched upon, I think St. Ignatius hasn't played that key opponent, but on the other side, I don't think this team has dropped a set this entire year. And even though it may be against like middle to lower end competition in terms of D1, even going in towards D2, that's still a good sign because this reminds me a lot of how Hudson played last year. You know, they're a very confident team when it comes to winning the games they need to win. They're a very steadfast team in that regards. And so now, I mean, from now until early April, it's just about continuing that momentum. And on the other side, Brexville Broadview, we still don't know how Region 2 is going to shape up. So I would probably say that's why I put them a little bit lower.
Fair enough there. And then Pickerington North, I think, is in a similar situation as St. Ignatius, although I think their quality competition is probably even lower. The only thing is they scrimmaged Derby and beat them. So I don't even know how much that matters at this point. But yeah, we're waiting on that. I think their test is the quad with Mount Vernon, Berlin, and Beaver Creek. So that'll be big there. But yeah, until then, I don't know. I can see where you're coming from, putting them at 10. In Division 2, top 5, pretty much all chalk there. McNick, obviously, I think is still the favorite. St. Charles right on their tail. Fenwick, like we said, had a great day against Elder. And then Roger Bacon and St. Mary, both solid squads. And then, yeah, I mean, outside of that, essentially the same thing here.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. Chillicothe as well. They were on the road at St. Charles. It's a tough test for them. They got swept, and I kind of jumped the gun and said, "Hey, I'm not going to put them in my top 10." But you think about who they beat, including Bishop Watterson. They've been a little bit more competitive this year compared to last, and they're making a name for themselves indeed too.
All right, and with that, this has been Ohio Volley Talk. Great to get another week under our belt. Yeah, we'll catch you next week.